you tired of watching your beloved nation fall prey to the insidious grip of communism? The Anti-Communist Manifesto by Jesse Kelly is the ultimate guide to fighting back against this destructive force. Discover the shocking truth about communism infiltrating our education system, corporations, and even environmental movements. Unmask the true agenda behind groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter and learn how to protect the United States from the most malicious enemy. With extensive documentation of past atrocities, you'll see the undeniable danger posed by this ideology. Arm yourself with knowledge and join the fight to preserve the American way of life. Pre-order your copy of the Anti-Communist Manifesto today at jessekellybook.com.
Didn't I tell you he had a scary voice? I bet you're buying it now. Now let's move on to some real news. That's real. It is out tomorrow, and thank you to all of you. I understand the sales are great, thank you, but there is actual real news now. The FBI. Now, just to recap where we are with this FBI document, you've seen a lot of Comer on stage or on TV. You've seen a lot of Comey. You've seen a lot of Christopher Wray. You've seen a lot of Jim Jordan. There's so many subpoenas and things going on. It's hard to keep track of what's going on. So let's just make sure we're clear on this story. An FBI whistleblower came forward. And what this whistleblower said was the FBI is in possession of a form. What is on this form? Well, an informant brought information to the FBI that laid out, allegedly, in detail, the crimes of the Joe Biden crime family. Now, Joe Biden has a crime family. He does. That's why they have all these different LLCs set up that receive large amounts of money from foreign corporations. That's a crime family. You don't do that if it's legal and legitimate. The Biden family is a crime family who's used Joe Biden's position to enrich Joe Biden and the whole family. That's what they've done. That's a crime. They are a crime family. Allegedly, this form lays it out in detail. It's not, Joe Biden's a criminal. Apparently, it's detailed. The payments to everything is detailed. GOP finds out about this because of an FBI whistleblower. GOP comes forward and tells the FBI, I'm going to need that form. Now, remember, allegedly, the FBI is underneath Congress, right? But the FBI says, nah, can't have the form. GOP says, okay, well, here's a subpoena. Now you're giving me the form. Now, this is the part that's a little bit disheartening. The FBI says, oh, wow, that's a nice subpoena you got there. Anyway, still can't have the form. What does that tell you about who's underneath who? So, of course, the FBI, the system, I shouldn't just boil this down to the FBI, the system itself has come out. This is what the system does, our corrupt system of government. They've locked shields in defense of the FBI. You got James Comey all over TV lying like this.
Well, it will change. The FBI will be fine in the long run. This fever around Donald Trump in the MAGA world will eventually break, but it's become somehow a nutty article of faith that the FBI is out to get Republicans. If you'd asked people 20 years ago whether that would someday be the accusation, they'd say that's nuts. It's nuts, but it will pass.
You were a Republican most of your life, but voted for, and you may still consider yourself one, but voted for Biden in 2020. Do you intend to vote for him again, or is there anyone on the Republican side you might consider if it's not Trump?
It has to be Joe Biden.
You've said that Trump poses a near existential threat to the rule of law. But tell me a little bit about the specifics of what he could try to do. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about what 4 years of a retribution presidency might look like. He could order the investigation and prosecution of individuals who he sees as enemies.
Wow. He could order the investigation and prosecution of his political enemies? Can you imagine what it would be like in America if the President of the United States directed the legal system to prosecute and investigate his political enemies? Imagine how shocked the January 6th prisoners will be to find out that that's something that might happen in the future. Anyway, let's finish up this story on the FBI form really quickly. Today, FBI Director Wray had said, okay, I'm going to let you look at the form. I'm going to let James Comer look at the form. You can look at the form. And then he didn't look at the form. Apparently, they're going to move forward now with contempt, and who knows where it goes from here. But the FBI, what you really need to know is, as of today, it's official. The FBI once again gave the double middle finger to the GOP. No fear whatsoever. But I actually want to circle back on this really quickly. In the future, Donald Trump might use his power as the president to prosecute his political enemies. That's what James Comey just said on television, which is funny because James Comey also said this on television.
I mean, it's this crazy world that Donald Trump has dragged this country into, but he could be wearing an ankle bracelet while accepting the nomination at the Republican convention.
And could be wearing an ankle bracelet and be elected in November.
Yeah, we could have, it would be rejected if you put it in a script for a show, but you could have a president who is potentially incarcerated when he's elected president.
What do you think that was? That was a threat. And that was, it's really clear you understand this. That wasn't fodder for cable news. It wasn't James Comey just trying to hype things up. That was a threat. It was a warning. And it was them telling you what's coming. I know this hurts to hear. It hurts to say. I don't celebrate it. It's a despicable state of affairs for our country. But you need to start prepping yourself for what's coming legally for Donald Trump. Remember what Julie Kelly came on here and said several times? They wouldn't actually put Donald Trump in prison, right? A former president. You don't think they'll go that far, right?
I absolutely do.
What we have now in this country is an evil system. It's way more than just the media. We make a mistake when we just criticize the media. Yes, the media is a despicable enemy of the people. There's no question about that. But it's way deeper than that. Media, working with the DOJ, working with the politicians, working with the entertainment industry, working with the medical industry, all these industries, the education system, all these industries working together. And right now, always remember this. Always remember, there is a goal right now. They are marching towards it. They're marching towards it quickly, and it's going to affect you and everyone you love. The goal is to turn opposition to Democrats into being an enemy of the state. The goal is to make you and your beliefs and your desires an enemy of the state. Why is that their goal? Because once they achieve that, then they can justify sending state power to your door. If you don't believe me, go ask some of the pro-life activists who've had FBI SWAT teams show up for reading Bible verses in their home. That is the end goal. So whether you're a Trump lover or a Trump hater, better remember this. What they've already done to the January 6th prisoners and what they're about to do to Trump is not the end. It is not the final goal. It is but a taste of what is to come for this country. It's part of the reason I wrote the daggone book, to let us know a way to fight back. Anti-communism, anti-communists. Why do we talk about that? What's the point of all that? One, let's focus on what communism is first. Remember this, and I talk about this extensively in the book. Communism is not what the dictionary definition is. It's not about the workers, or it's nothing to do with any of that at all. That's why communism has taken on a different form every country where it's been. For China's communism, did you know it looked radically different than the communism in the Soviet Union? So it started in the Soviet Union, and again, I talk about this, where the urban poor were really malcontented. They were really unhappy for many valid reasons. The communists, as they were whipping up the revolution in the Soviet Union, they focused on the urban poor because the urban poor were the malcontents in the society, and you can use people's bitterness to destroy things you want destroyed and to give yourself power. So boom, Soviet Union, urban poor. China starts picking up on this communism thing, starts really catching on in certain circles there. And they're working with the Soviet Union, Lenin and Stalin and these guys. So they're working with guys like Mao in China. And Mao starts to have some conflicts with the Soviet communists. Why? Because the Soviet communists were telling Mao, hey, focus on the urban poor. You got to focus on those urban poor. And Mao said, what? No, you don't understand China. We don't have mass amounts of malcontented urban poor here. Our rural poor, those are the malcontents. So that's where we need to go. So the communists in China found a different group of malcontents. Cambodia looked totally different than all the rest of them. America, and most of the West, this isn't unique to America, it looks radically different here than it did there. Why? Because we have different malcontents. And the communists in the 60s and 70s, they actually wrote this down that they needed to make a shift from all this worker stuff. It was not catching on in the West to their frustration. They had to make a shift. So where do you shift? Well, you just find people's malcontents. What are the fingers of America's communist fist? What are they really? And these are all laid out in the book in the historical context of them. What are the fingers of the fist? The climate change nutters, the feminists, the, quote, civil rights, Black Lives Matter types, of course, the LGBTQ. These are all fingers of America's communist fist. What do they all have in common? These were the malcontents in our society. The communism is nothing more than a religion that's the search for any society's malcontents. You search for them, you find them, you use their bitterness to burn society down. That's all communism is. 100 years from now, it'll look totally different than it does here today. So why anti-communism? There's 1,000 of these books, right? Everybody writes a book now of conservatism and libertarianism and nationalism and neoconservative. Why anti-communism? What is the point of that? What am I saying? Well, what I'm saying is we're up against a religion of death and destruction. It is a death cult. And unless they are stopped, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. And to be honest, I find many of these squabbles on the various factions on the right, I find them to be laughable. Not because they're not important arguments to have, but because these are pointless arguments to have while the communist has taken over every single institution. These squabbles people have on the right, it's you and I arguing over which color we want to paint the walls while a murderous gang of thugs is kicking down the front door to murder both of us. Why are we arguing about the wall paint? They must be stopped first. Once they are stopped, then we can come back and we can have a knockdown drag out about the wall paint. But until they are stopped, nothing else matters. Anti-communism is all that matters. Why do I speak like that? Well, because I understand history. And you'll read about this in the Anti-Communist Manifesto. Things like 1.7 million dead in Lenin's concentration camps. You know them as gulags. 18 million of those were slave labor camps. Oh, and did I mention, it wasn't just a bunch of murderers and rapists in those camps. It was political prisoners. Can you imagine living in a country where the political party in charge would lock up its political opponents? January 6th, Trump. Could you imagine living in a country like that? Did you know that Joseph Stalin, that he starved millions of people to death in Ukraine? It's known as the Holodomor. You can read about that in the book as well. How many millions of people? Oh, I don't know. Might be 2 million. Might be 10 million. Nobody knows. Why? Because they starved to death in their beds. Families drawing straws to see which family member they would kill and eat that day. That's not something out of the movies. That's what communists have done. Dogs roaming the streets with an arm in their mouth from a hastily buried body. Nobody knows how many the communists killed in Ukraine because all the mass graves covered it up. It was such a disaster, the numbers can never and will never be known. Did you know that Mao's CCP, they outlawed private farming? They decided these small businesses needed to be a thing of the past. Instead, we're going to do a gigantic, basically, we're going to nationalize the farming industry. All of you gather together on this communal farm. Except when everyone gathered together on the communal farm, They weren't producing, not everybody was. I mean, sure, the young, strong men were, but gosh, these pregnant women and the kids and the old people, they're kind of a burden. Hey, let's just kill them or let them starve to death. I won't even go into the details of what they did at Petsest prison. I won't even tell you about Cambodia. You can learn about that in the Anti-Communist Manifesto, where they had 15-year-olds beating people to death by the million. 25% of Cambodia's population gone in 4 years. Why do I discuss anti-communism so passionately? Why am I an anti-communist, not a conservative or anything else these people call? Because I understand nothing else matters. Nothing, unless these people are defeated. What is coming for America very, very quickly is more horrific than you have ever seen a movie about, more horrific than you can imagine, unless these people are stopped. That's why I write chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter about various parts of American communism. From corporate communism, I write about education system in this country. I write about the LGBTQ mob. Don't think the Black Lives Matter civil rights hustlers got out. Antifa. Did you know that Antifa, today's Antifa, do you know they draw a direct connection between the communist Antifa that was taking place in Weimar, Germany before World War II? And did you know in Weimar, Germany before World War II, they called themselves Antifa? These are the kind of tidbits that are here in the book. We will talk about cultural destruction in the book. That's chapter 2, by the way, if you want a little preview. Cultural destruction. Why do they rename military bases? Is it because they're really passionate about slavery? They're very protective of black people. Just passionate about human rights. Is that why they remake your street names, remake your military bases, tear down monuments? I've got news for you. That has nothing to do with it whatsoever. You see, the communist destroys your monuments, your history, because the communist is out to destroy you. I'm worried about something right now. I'm worried about the Russia-Ukraine situation. When I get reports about Russia moving nuclear weapons into Belarus, that concerns me. When I see propaganda from some of the most despicable outlets out there, like the Washington Post, talking about things like the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and how Ukraine bombed it, that concerns me. And you know why it concerns me? Ukraine did not bomb Nord Stream 2. Now, I wasn't there, but I'm telling you right now, and I need you to hear me, Ukraine did not bomb Nord Stream 2. Do you know how I know? Because Ukraine can't bomb Nord Stream 2. They don't have the ability to bomb Nord Stream 2. I am not one of these super ninja, Navy SEAL, Green Beret types, but I know many, and I've spoken with many of them. I've interviewed them on the air. There are maybe 4 or 5, 6 countries on the planet, nation states, that have the ability to pull off an op like that in deep water like that. It wasn't some rebel group. It wasn't some third-tier country like Ukraine. It was one of the big boys. It was us. You can maybe blame the Ruskies themselves, although I don't believe that. It was Britain, maybe France. It was a top-end NATO country, or us. Ukraine didn't bomb it. We know that. That's a fact. Ukraine did not bomb it. But they're telling us Ukraine did. And do you remember that Joe Biden immediately, on top of this slide, right after it was bombed, Joe Biden went out and Joe Biden blamed it on the Russians?
It was a deliberate act of sabotage, and now the Russians are pumping out disinformation and lies. We're going to work with our allies to get to the bottom of precisely what happened.
We're going to figure out exactly what happened. We're going to figure out what happened. Well, here's one of the things that might have happened. Did you know that NATO, and this involved U.S. naval vessels, the United States Navy was there, did you know that they were doing exercises a mile away from those pipelines when those pipelines blew up? 1 mile. They didn't even pretend to get far enough away. They were 1 mile away. Which leads me to this. Joe Biden having a melting brain makes for great TV, makes for funny sound bites. We laugh, I laugh, you laugh, everyone laughs. But it's also a tremendous national security risk. Incredible. because the President of the United States of America speaks on camera all the time. And he also contains within his melting brain national security secrets that affect the security of the entire planet. And if he's not able to keep those secrets within his mind and instead says them to the press, we're in trouble.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
One of the most jaw-dropping moments in the history of presidential television, and most people have forgotten about it or never saw it at all. The President of the United States of America, who gets national security briefs every single day with super classified information. His brain is so non-functional, he took the information from that brief that he had clearly discussed with his advisors and went and broadcasted it to the world. It was so amazing. The reporter, you could hear how dumbfounded she was. How would you do that? What? How are you going to do that? It's not even in your control. And then you could tell he caught himself. Well, it'll be taken care of. Amazing.
For too long, we've been led to believe that communism is a thing of the past. But the truth is, communism is alive. It's here, and it's infiltrating every aspect of American life. Introducing the Anti-Communist Manifesto by Jesse Kelly, the practical guide for patriots ready to defend our nation from its most dangerous enemy. Discover the shocking extent of communist infiltration in our education system, their alliance with American corporations, and the twisted truth behind environmentalism. This eye-opening book exposes the true face of communism and empowers you to fight back. Join the fight for freedom. Pre-order your copy of the Anti-Communist Manifesto today by going to jessekellybook.com.